The Penguins' two-game winning streak came to an end on Saturday against the New Jersey Devils, but they'll have a chance to make it 3 wins in their last 4 games tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers. Jesse Marshall is back for Marshall Monday to break it all down right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Usually I'm joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Send Him for Web, but he's driving to Philadelphia right now to see his family for Christmas. We tried to get him on for a Elliot Friedman car edition of the show, but, just didn't want to really lose his connection on the turnpike. And we want to be safe, of course, here on this podcast. He will be back with another episode with me on Tuesday, but joining us once again for Marshall Monday is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jesse Marshall. Jesse, I hope you're in the holiday spirit today.
Yeah, hard not to be. Christmas right around the corner, feeling festive.
Of course. Christmas in a couple of days. Hell, Hanukkah starts also on Christmas Day. I think that's the first time for as long as I've been alive that Hanukkah starts on Christmas Day. Exactly. So that's pretty cool. But getting to a couple of other things. First, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, Jesse, the Penguins' 2-game winning streak came to an end on Saturday as they were shut out 3-0 by the New Jersey Devils. I thought the Penguins came out with a purpose in that game. I thought they dominated those first 20 minutes. Markstrom was really good in that period, as he was really good in the latter 2 periods. But after that, I felt like the Devils took the Penguins to school. They were really doing a nice job of clogging up the neutral zone. A lot of one-and-dones for the Penguins when they got into the offensive zone. I mean, they just weren't generating much of anything. If you were to tell me that this game was played in the late 90s to early 2000s, I honestly would have believed you. A lot of this game I felt like was pretty low event. The Devils did break through late in the second period thanks to Stefan Nason, who made it 1-0. Then they got 2 more goals in the third period to win this game 3-0. But Penguins just did not generate enough in this one. Usually they are very good at generating chances. They're top 5, top 10 expected goals this season, but not in this one. Jesse, it's been a little bit since we've had you on. The Penguins are on this 8-3-1 stretch right now. What did you take out of that game against New Jersey? And are you more still optimistic about this team, at least a little bit going forward, now that they've clawed their way out of a little bit of the mess that they put themselves in?
Yeah, I mean, I think my takeaway is just that New Jersey's the better team, right? Like you said it, right? Like the Penguins came out in the first 20, they threw their best punch. I was kind of surprised at how well they skated with New Jersey right out of the gate. I thought that would be the area where like the deficiency showed the most, but it did eventually, right? I think as the game went on, like you mentioned, they started to take it away. I think that Nico Hischier, on a side note, has just been like one of the 5 best players in the National Hockey League this year. I'm very bullish on his performance. So I thought that, you talk about like neutral zone dominance. He's one of the players that make that that stir that drink for New Jersey. So yeah, I thought that the Penguins they hung in there as best they could, but they lost to a better team without embarrassing themselves. So that's the key. It's a far cry from like the 6-0 drubbing you saw on opening night against the Rangers, right? It wasn't one of those, but it was just them losing to a better team, which is going to happen, right? Like that's just the way it is. I mean, I think that is there's always like the disconcerting trend of them being really bad in their own division right now, which is not great. And you can't sniff the playoffs and have that be true. But if you look around the division too, Hunter, like New Jersey, Carolina, heck, even Washington now, these are teams that play with some speed, right? They're fast. They have up-tempo forecheck. They control the area in between both blue lines. So it's not a surprise to me that those are the kinds of teams that the Penguins are going to struggle with. I mean, even Columbus, to their credit, has got some element of speed on their roster, right? So, yeah, that's disconcerting. But overall, I don't think that you walked away from this game with like blaring red lights, or flashing red lights. There wasn't any chaos or, real cause for concern. New Jersey's just a really solid hockey club, and they won the game as a result.
Right. I mean, and New Jersey's been doing this really well defensively throughout the season. I mean, you go back and look at the shots on goal they've allowed these last 8 games, and credit to Dmitry Filipovich for putting this full stat out there. He is fantastic. I know you go on his show quite a bit, Jesse. You go back for some of these, holding the Penguins to 12 shots. Then before that, 20 shots, 17, 14. There's another 17 in there as well. They are very stingy defensively in their own zone. Credit to Sheldon Keefe for really getting that point across for his team. But they've been doing this to everyone. It's not just the Penguins. Obviously, 12 shots, really poor, but it's not like, that's a one-off for them. They've been doing this to a lot of teams this year. And the Penguins, they had chances at times, at least in that second period, even though they were being outskated, outchanced during that time, they had a chance or two to still take control of that game. You had Sidney Crosby flat out robbed by Jacob Markstrom in that one. One heck of a save, gets a little bit of the glove on it, and then the puck hits the post. If he doesn't get the glove on that, that's a goal. It's 1-0. Who knows how the rest of that game goes? So that's just a situation where, again, you want to see him convert on that chance, but that's the fine line. Jacob Markstrom, he plays usually fairly well against the Penguins, but with Markstrom in general this year, that's been their biggest difference, I think, for me. They finally got their goaltending position solidified, and it's no wonder why they're one of the top 3 teams in the Metro, and why I think when healthy, they are going to be a very tough out for whoever they play in the playoffs. I wasn't, mad or annoyed at the Penguins in that game. It was just the Devils did a great job clogging everything up and just making life really difficult for the Penguins, which is difficult to do, at least during this stretch, because the Penguins have been great at generating offense.
They remind you a little bit of those 2016, 2017 Penguins, right? With the way that they weren't necessarily good defensively by nature of like their on paper roster, but the way that they forechecked and controlled the game meant that they didn't give you a lot of chances at the other end, right? That it reminds me of the same thing. Where they really killed the Penguins, I thought, Hunter, was like, I don't want to pile on like this is going to sound like I'm piling on Evgeny Malkin, but that line got worked really hard. They struggled. I think that the Devils' depth tested them. The Penguins' fourth and second lines really got sunk in that game. The Crosby line treaded water, but that's a far cry from them controlling 60% of the shots and expected goals in the games. Where honestly, that's where they've been living for really the most of the last month. Is it just absolutely been dominating the game? So they came out with their heads slightly above or below water, but it was that that's not good enough, right? So that when you can confidently roll 4 lines like that in a variety of situation, it just handcuffs the other team so hard. And I thought that especially again the second and fourth lines for the Penguins really struggled to find their way out of the zone. And cross the red line with possession. And that's so important for the Penguins now, Hunter, because they're just not as good anymore as they used to be at hunting down loose pucks, right? Like the dump and chase game comes with some level of risk if executed poorly, because it's hard for them in a lot of cases to win these foot races, right? So if you can't cross the red line with possession, you got a team like New Jersey, it's effectively shutting you down from doing that. It makes everybody's life harder, but it makes the Penguins' life especially harder given their makeup.
Right. No, I hear you on that. I do think Tristan Jarry played as well as he could in that game. The second goal was tough because I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to cover the puck. I don't like that Nason was just kind of standing there, cross-checking people in front of the net, not really going for the puck. I think that was just kind of a pretty annoying play, but you know what, whatever. But I still felt like he made a lot of really timely saves in that game. Also, one more thing, want to get your thoughts on P.O. Joseph's debut, at least this season for the Penguins. Obviously, he was not here for before this because he had just gotten traded over and he was with the St. Louis Blues. But just he wanted to get your thoughts. How do you think he looked? At least for me, I thought he made a couple pretty solid defensive plays, even drove a little bit of offense in this game. He created, a little bit of offense from the blue line. All in all, I felt like it was a pretty solid debut for him, even though I know at least a little bit lately he hadn't been playing as much in St. Louis because their blue line is really crowded right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd showed me the video of that game and asked me if I thought it came from last year, I probably would have said yeah. Which is not a knock on him, right? I said this when the trade happened, Hunter. The one thing you can say for him is he's a known commodity, right? And in the sense that exactly what you're going to get. And there's rarely been times where you look at his play and be like, man, that really sunk the team. I mean, sure, as a puck moving defenseman, he's prone to that same egregious, oops, I pinched mistake that every offensive defenseman on the squad is liable to make. But obviously him not being the greatest defensively comes with some, and I think in situations, Hunter, where he's got to read a play right, and audible or switch with someone, he struggles the most, right? None of that was really on display, but we know that those are his faults. We know that that's what it comes with. You can get these kind of like minutes out of him. I mean, he played 17, I think, at 18 and even strength, which is like, a lot. But I think you can plug him in those situations and get a decent performance out of him. And on the Tristan Jarry thing, people are going to think I'm insulting him when I say this. I'm not, because like if you think about where he was 2 months ago, this is an improvement. He just exists to me, right? I don't know if that sounds, if you know what I mean by that. Like, he's not costing them games.
No.
Right? But you very rarely would look at him and say that he's winning them games, right? But I think this also proves the theory that you and I have had for years, which is that the Penguins just get an average goaltending performance, and that's fine. Like, that's all they need with their offense most nights. It's sort of like eternally true that if you could just give them an average, league average performance, they can make something really pretty out of that. And that's really what it's come down to. So that, again, is a compliment to him, because his performance at the beginning of the year was just quite simply below the line. But I don't think about him anymore, which I think is a good thing, right? Like, it's
Right.
I think, like, you're not spending all night long like being concerned about, you get a much more calm vibe, if you will, from his performance recently.
Yeah, I mean, you take out that empty netter, it's only 2-0. Again, I felt like he made a lot of really good timely saves. He was fine in net. The Penguins, again, just really didn't generate much of anything. I feel like if they were able to capitalize on, a couple of those chances in the first period, and then obviously that big Crosby chance in the second period, this game's potentially, way different. Who knows? But I think that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, Jesse and I are going to tackle the Owen Pickering injury and what the rest of the defense will look like. And a little bit later on, we're going to preview tonight's big Penguins-Flyers matchup, as well as look at the rest of the week here, especially that big back-to-back against the New York Islanders. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with the FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by special guest Jesse Marshall from Marshall Monday. Patrick Damp, we were supposed to have him here, but he decided to leave early because he's a loser. No, I'm just joking. He's heading to Philadelphia to spend Christmas with his girlfriend and her family, and I hope he's having a really safe drive on the Pennsylvania Turnpike right now. So, Jesse, the Penguins will be out with another defenseman going forward. Marcus Pettersson, still week to week, though he did skate before the morning skate today. Really good news. Kyle Dubas said last week that this is only a 2 to 3 week injury, so we're a little over a weekend. So hopefully another week or two, and then he's back for at least a little bit. That's great news. But Owen Pickering, he is now out with a concussion. Nathan Clerman was recalled from Wilkes-Barre today, and that's another big blow to the defense. I like how Pickering was playing for the most part since coming up from Wilkes-Barre. I feel like this week was probably the worst week he's had as an NHLer, just because, I don't know, just really wasn't making the right plays in his own zone. My dog, of course, is starting to bark a little bit behind me. I just felt like he wasn't as consistent this week compared to the other weeks that he had been playing, especially on the top pairing with Chris Letang. That bumps up P.O. Joseph to the top pairing with Letang. You have Matt Grzelcyk with Erik Karlsson, and then Ryan Graves will slot back in with Ryan Shea for this one. So, Jesse, what do you make of the Pickering injury, and how big of a loss do you think this is going to be going forward?
I think it stinks. He wasn't lighting the world on fire, right? Like, it wasn't like he was, jettisoning himself into the Calder nomination trophy nomination conversation. But like, I thought he'd played really well. Especially, I don't know where my expectation was, Hunter. I think he beat it. I think he for sure beat where my expectation was. What you mentioned there is like what I said on Twitter before he got called, right when he got called up, is that the problems he's had this season have come from games that go really fast and speed up. You almost playing like NHL 24, and that pressure meter builds up while you're stuck in your defensive zone. That's sort of like him in a nutshell. I think sometimes when things get really, really chaotic, he has a tendency to make no looks with the puck. He's just getting rid of it as fast as he possibly can, and it causes a turnover and causes more chaos. Or he throws a puck to a teammate that's in a really bad position for it, and is maybe compromised in some way and is not does not want that puck. So I think those are things that are continuing to evolve for him, and they can get better with time and become less and less of issues. But that's why you want to see him in, right, is to continue to work those kinks out. I think that he inserted a much needed element of patience into this defensive group, right? Not only in how he chooses to not defend, not to attack in some situations, but I think even defensively, his gap control has always been his strength. His one-on-one defensive ability, facing down another forward, that's really where he's at his best. And I think you rarely see him make the first move. It's always forcing the forward into a bad decision. That sort of seemed to be somewhat infectious as a theme among the Penguins defense, thanks to him. So I think that's a loss, right? Is that element of like calming things down and keeping people in front of you, because we know that when things generally go sour for the Penguins defense under, it's because they're, heading the wrong direction. So I think in that case, it was a much needed presence, but hopefully this doesn't last too long. He can keep racking that experience up, because that's what it's about right now, right? For him is just shake the green off those antlers as much as you possibly can, and get ready for the spring. So when the games get faster and more physical. So hopefully he's not out for too long.
Right. He'll also have a more elevated role, I feel like, when that time comes around, just because we both only expect Marcus Pettersson to be here after the trade deadline. So he's going to be playing full-time, I would say, in the top four once the spring rolls around. But again, I felt like this week he was a little bit too aggressive with some of his pinches. His gap control came a little bit down this week, but I do think once he comes back, he's going to be playing quite a bit better. Every player that's, in his first stint in the league is going to have a week like this. So I'm not really too concerned, especially after what I saw before this week, where he was playing really well and showing that I feel like he's NHL ready at this point. Jesse, you mentioned this before we started recording, and I guess we'll get to it now before we preview this big Penguins Flyers game. What is this Buffalo gravy boat that you wanted to discuss?
I told you about this. Yeah, I told you about this before the show. I just wanted to mention people, because they might not know this. On Thanksgiving, the Sabres nightly giveaway for the fans was a small porcelain gravy boat. It was like a Zamboni. I personally think it's pretty hideous. Like, I think it's a poor giveaway. Like, I just don't think that's a great giveaway for a franchise. Haven't won a game since the gravy boat. Bro. The gravy boat sank the Buffalo Sabres season. So just be careful out there. You're picking your PR, campaigns for your team. You go down the wrong path. You pick an ugly gravy boat. That could be it for you. So just want to let you know, since the gravy boat. I think it was November 22nd. They haven't won since.
Hey, that's definitely one of their problems. Another one is that they just need to make a big move, man. I feel like it's time to really shake up that team, and I think Kevin Adams knows that his job is very much on the line right now. I honestly don't.
He just got a vote of confidence from the owner. The owner says he's doing a great job.
If he survives this season, I don't know what Terry Pegula is doing, man. I really just don't get it. I mean, you have that team that's
Hunter,
going.
You don't need to wait till the end of the season to not know what Terry Pegula is doing. You could just say that right now. Like, we don't need to wait. Regardless of Kevin Adams, like, we've already established that we don't know what Terry Pegula is doing.
No, especially with the Sabres.
Anyway,
him and his family, they're good with the Bills, but with the Sabres, they don't really know what they're doing with that team. You have
they're huge Penn State donors too, right? Is that true?
Yeah, I think so.
So because he's involved, like, the whole ice hockey arena up there is like all him, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's Pegula? His name's on it, right? That's what I thought.
Yeah, I believe you're right. Yes.
Come down and build a stadium.
Yeah, man. I mean, you have the Rangers. They're going through. Chris Kreider was a healthy scratch today. I mean, goodness gracious. Then you have the Islanders, who aren't very good. So pretty rough times for the New York hockey teams right now. But I think that'll do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, it's the Battle of Pennsylvania with the Penguins and the Flyers. The Penguins who try and notch 2 big points in this one on Monday night. Jesse is going to help me preview that game, as well as look at the rest of the week here for the Penguins, especially, again, that big back-to-back against the New York Islanders. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about our final sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. It is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. It's the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. And if you do sign up today, you can get $50 instantly when you play only $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. They also offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Pick discounts select player projections up to 25% off to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 right away after you play your first $5 lineup. That is Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by special guest Jesse Marshall. Again, Patrick Damp. He will be back for Tuesday's episode to recap this game against the Flyers once he's all settled in Philadelphia. I'm where I need to be for this week. I'm in Virginia with my girlfriend and her family. So, yes, apologize for the different setup today. I'm also recording on my work laptop. But big game tonight, Jesse. Penguins, Flyers, 2 teams right with each other in the standings. One team is 15-15-5. The other is 15-15-4. So 2 mediocre / average teams going at it. But when you look at where both teams are in the standings, they're right around that final playoff spot. The Penguins only a few points behind the Ottawa Senators. Again, the biggest thing right now for the Penguins, that's their enemy, the games in hand. They have more. They don't have games in hand on those other teams. So you have to bank points when you can. And I've been saying it for the last several weeks. You know, they've been playing really well throughout the month of December. They're 8-3-1 in their last 12 games. If you can finish this month off in style, get 2 points in regulation here against the Flyers, maybe sweep that back-to-back against the Islanders, and then maybe even beat the Red Wings, I will be way more confident heading into January after what they just did in December. You know, you drop the game against the Devils. Okay, that's whatever. But now you got to get back to it and play well against teams that are literally right around you in the standings. This Flyers team, you know what you're going to get with John Tortorella. Very disciplined defensive team. Matvei Michkov is, in my opinion, one of the 2 favorites for the Calder right now. I would say him and Celebrini are right up the top. He has been fantastic for the Flyers this year. Travis Konechny has been their best player, 40 points in 34 games. Owen Tippett, also has double-digit goals. Travis Sanheim is still there. You have Sean Couturier, Scott Lawton. So a lot of regulars that have been in this team for a long time. And with a veteran head coach, they started the season struggling, but they've really come on a bit as of late to get themselves back in the race. Jesse, what are you looking for from the Penguins tonight in order to secure 2 points?
Shot volume. The Flyers, from a save percentage perspective, are 32nd in the National Hockey League at even strength. In a raw goals against perspective, they're 30th in the National Hockey League at even strength. You get, goal share overall, they're 26th. You get the idea, right? They're sort of still trying to find themselves inside the pipes, between the pipes and the net. That's not quite clear yet from an identity perspective, organizationally, and for the future. It's affected them. You named it, right? Michkov's been unbelievable. Their offense is significantly better this year than it was last year by almost a half goal a game, which is a non-insignificant amount. The problem is they've gotten worse defensively in net. So keeping up with that has been hard, right? And they're scoring more goals, yes, but they're also allowing more goals. So I think that the net benefit has somewhat canceled itself out to some extent, and I'm sure much to John Tortorella's chagrin. But overall, this is a tough out now, right? They play John Tortorella hockey. It's very much a team that's emblematic of their coach. They love to dig work out of the corner in the offensive zone and maintain long offensive, deep cycling, sort of like triangular possessions in the offensive zone. I think that's going to be a handful for the Penguins. But they've shown recently, Hunter, that they could just not shoot themselves in the foot with like the bad pinching and the poor decision making at the offensive blue line. They can do a little bit of that themselves and draw some shifts out and start controlling the game. So, I mentioned earlier on the show, last night was a blip on the radar for Sidney Crosby, right? And what has been an otherwise, since the Sabres put the gravy boat out, the opposite's been true for Crosby. I mean, he's just been unstoppable. So we know he loves to play the Flyers. We know he didn't have a great night last night. And like you mentioned earlier, missed some chances to get the Penguins on the board early. So I'm looking to, one, take a lot of shots as a team tonight, and two, feed Sidney Crosby as much as possible.
You said it. He loves playing the Flyers, especially in the regular season. In 87 career regular season games against the Flyers, he has 55 goals and 129 points. I got that straight from my notes for today's episode because I love preparing. So, yeah, to say that,
and it's crazy too, right? Thinking that goes all the way back, Hunter, to when Hatcher broke his tooth, right? You remember that game? Mm-hmm. And he was spitting blood after he scored the overtime goal.
Screw you, Ken Hitchcock, by the way.
Yeah.
Screw you.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the other thing too. Well, we don't have time for that right now, but we should do a whole show one day about that game and the impact it had on the future of the Penguins, because I don't think people realize there's a lot that came out of that. But and that's a lot of points, man. 120. Wow, I knew it was a lot, but it's been a while since I checked, I guess. Sheer dominance.
He loves playing them. You have the famous interview. I don't like anyone on their team. Again, you said it. We could probably do a hour to 2 hour episode on the Penguins Flyers rivalry, especially from this era of Penguins hockey. We honestly could go longer than
well, I mean, even like I would say the prior. I was just about to ask you to close. Like, the one question I had for you today is, does this hit the same? Like, thinking about this game tonight, like, is it like where do we put this? Like, where's Penguins rivalry like with the Flyers at in present state? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are you grading it? I got to go 4, right? Like, the two teams are just not in competitive spaces like they used to be. I mean, that's the difference, right? Is that when you meet in the playoffs, it jacks everything up and spices everything up. Like, the Penguins and Ottawa were never in the same division, but they played each other in the first round every year and, developed that sort of organic hatred. Same with Detroit for that matter. But regular season games aren't enough to do it. It's just not. It's just that they're not. And I think as a result, the unfortunate sacrifice of like the Penguins Flyers rivalry has been like, Philly's rebuilding, the Penguins sort of getting older. I still look forward to it, because it's ingrained. If you grew up in like, a certain era, like it's ingrained in you, but it definitely lacks the pizzazz that it used to have for sure.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I'd probably go even a 3. It's definitely not the same as it used to be, even just, from, obviously the 2012 series, like that was an 11 out of 10, the series.
Oh, yeah.
A few years later when they played in 2018, that was probably at like a 6, even if I had to say. But now it's kind of at a 3 because, you got the Rangers right now. That's a 10 out of 10. I would probably have the Capitals at around still like a 6 or a 7. It's not a 9 or a 10, but it's still, like average to above average. You have the Islanders up there, I would say still probably in that, 6 range. Other than that, I would probably put the Flyers below all of them right now, just because of the way the rivalry is. So
I'm starting to see Carolina up there because they just can't. The Penguins can't beat them. It's no one-sided rivalry, right?
The way the Hurricanes play. Well, first off, it's not enjoyable to watch. Let's face it. I just watching. I don't know how Canes fans do that for 82 games. Like they're the more fun version of the Islanders. That's the way I like saying it on this show. Pat usually agrees with me. They are the more fun version of the Islanders, but their style, it just bleeds the Penguins dry, truly.
It does, yeah. Well, it's the same thing, though, like we said earlier about speed, right? It's the same thing. They can't keep up.
Right. No, 100%. As for the other point you made about, the Penguins and, just they're playing defensively, I agree. I mean, they've been really able to keep things a lot simple during this 12-game stretch. They've really been less aggressive with their pinches. They're being more diligent when they're on the ice. And I want to see that continue in this one against the Flyers. The Penguins have also struggled against Metro teams this year. Yeah, they have beaten the Capitals, but they've lost a couple of times to the Rangers. They've lost to the Islanders. They've lost to the Hurricanes twice. They've now lost to the Devils. They need to start winning more games in the division. They also lost to the Blue Jackets, of course. But the biggest thing, my point is, Jesse, of course, they need to start winning games inside their division. Usually they play this division, fairly well, at least average each season. This year, though, it's been anything but that. And that needs to change ASAP if they really want to get back into this race even more. Later this week, they will play the New York Islanders for a big home and home. You got to, in my opinion, I think you got to sweep those 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing, the thing you have going for you right now is that, you clump together the best teams in the National Hockey League from the perspective of generating quality shots, and the Penguins are in that clump. You have to lean on that right now, right? And these are teams that play like ugly, nasty, chip it up hockey, right? They try to slow it down. They try to make it low event. You can't play that game. That's not what your strength is. Your strength is to live by the sword and die by the sword, right? That the Penguins are going to be exciting offensively, and they're going to terrify you defensively at the same time. Not because they're good defense, because they're bad at it, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, that's what this team is built for. And to be anything less than that is trying to force your dog to meow. So I hope that we see them just, bring some of that, how do you say, like, recklessness in, Hunter, against some of these teams. And just, if you can get them down early and not let them do what they want to do, it changes your fortunes a little bit.
Agreed. And you also made a point about the Flyers goaltending a bit earlier. Yeah, it's been ugly. I mean, you have Urson, who's played 16 games, Kolosov, who's played 11, Ivan Fedotov, who's played 10, but they're all well below 900 this year. Urson's at 881, Kolosov 878, Fedotov 877. So the Penguins, funny enough, we can't really say this that often this season, Jesse, but they will have the goaltending edge in this one.
It's one of the rare moments.
Yeah.
One of the rare moments where you could start anyone, and that would be true.
Yes, the Flyers goaltending this year has been atrocious. So the Penguins, with the way they generate, there's going to be quite a few opportunities, hopefully, for them to score quite a few goals in this one. One more thing, Jesse, before I get you out of here. Has this stretch of good play changed the way you look at this team this year? 8-3-1 in 12 games. They've climbed their way a little bit up the standings. How would you say this team is right now heading into these final few games of 2024 and then into the month of January?
I mean, it's definitely changed. It's definitely changed the way that I look at them, for sure. But like, the bar was so low, Connor, right? Like they were getting embarrassed on some nights. There were some nights where they couldn't execute simple line changes. Like day -1 stuff. So that seems to have gone the way of the Buffalo, which is good. The goaltending has stabilized and is no longer hemorrhaging them opportunities. Their offense has been there all year. Like, that is the only consistent thing they've had from start to finish. And their defense is leveled off. So, they're, again, I think, like, at almost what you would say is their best. They're a bubble team, right? Like, they're not. Their best stretch run doesn't put them in amongst the monsters of the East. Like, they're not suddenly on Tampa's level, right? But they're competent. They've made a couple people on Twitter. We were talking about this week. A couple people on Twitter said to me, they've made it fun to watch the games again. I'm like, that's true. That is true. That you don't sort of like sit there and have to suffer through a game where they're down by 6, right? So I think there's a big difference there. So it's changed it, Hunter, but I don't know that it's changed it in terms of like their ceiling has really adjusted. Like, I think that their basement has just lifted. Maybe their ceiling has gone up a little bit, but I have used the term mid to describe them a lot, but in this case, it's complementary, right? Like, mid is better than what they were at the start of the season. So like, you can hear the word mid and get mad, or you could be like, wow, yeah, that's actually not bad considering that they were like, but at the start of the year, so I think, you and I have both said consistency, right, is the name of the game here. Like, if they can continue to do this, or even if it breaks up and they go through a rough patch, if they can do it again, right, like, and get right back on that horse, that's what makes the difference to me. Yeah.
Agreed. And they've beaten some really good teams during this stretch too. And I said it last week, these aren't just fluky wins. They're not just, they're getting by the skin of their teeth. Well, the Panthers won a little bit. That was a wacky game in general.
Yeah,
but all these other teams they've beaten, they've dominated them. Like, they've actually gone out there, played mostly a very good 60 minutes, and they have earned those wins. So if they can do that again to end the year here, I'll start to get even more confidence that maybe, just maybe, they could potentially pull something off and sneak in to that final playoff spot. Again, that's long ways away. Let's see what they do this week and then heading into the new year. But it's at least a little bit possible right now. And we really couldn't say that, 3 to 4 weeks ago at this rate.
No.
But I think that will do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Jesse, thank you so much for coming on for another edition of Marshall Monday. We hope to have you on again next week and when Pat is hopefully here. But what do you have coming up either this week, next weekend? What do you got coming up content-wise?
Nothing. It's Christmas. So taking a break. Just dropped a new episode of the PDO cast with Dimitri Filipovich that was about Macklin Celebrini, real nerd level stuff. So check that out if you're into players working with. We told a good story there about like Celebrini working with the company to create like his own blade that I thought was pretty cool. So that's what I'll pump for now.
Hey, I like it. I was hoping, stuff. Obviously, I know Christmas is on Wednesday. You're not going to be posting anything by then, but hey, I had to ask at least potentially for something after Christmas, though. Again, I know New Year's is also next week, but again, that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with another show for you all on Tuesday to recap this game against the Flyers and detail anything else regarding this hockey team. So for Jesse Marshall, I am Hunter Hodes. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and Pat and I will talk to you all on Tuesday.